let me tell you about Kirby Air Ride.
After cementing Super Smash Bros. As an iconic franchise with Melee, and showing that Kirby can still be relevant in the evolving gaming landscape with the remake of his NES adventure with Nightmare in Dreamland, Masahiro Sakurai decided to resurrect a scrapped idea lost from the early days of the Nintendo 64. While initially teased as a launch title for that system and then cancelled indefinitely, the story for this game changed as the years went on. It had glimpses of a new future as a video demo for the GameCube and then fully brought back into development for the new hardware. It was a game filled with a complicated development cycle that actually led to Sakurai leaving HAL once the game was released. It stands as one of the most divisive and unique entries in its franchise and within its genre. I'm talking about the odd entry in the Kirby franchise that brought us Dragoon and stands as one of my favorites within its console. The hard-to-master gem that is Kirby Air Ride.
I know one of the biggest complaints people had about the game on its initial release, and even still to this day, is that its controls are too simple. But I'd argue that they're just not typical of its genre. Yes, they are simple to a very blunt point. The game only requires a stick and a button to really do much. I more think that at the surface, this game seems like it doesn't have a whole lot to offer. And yes, there's only 3 game modes, and yes, because of its weird control scheme, there is a bit of a learning curve, but to me personally, while I don't think it's the best Kirby game, or even the best GameCube game, or the best racing game on the GameCube, it's still a really fucking great game. It's one of my favorite games on the GameCube, and that's because I've sat with this game. I got this game around the time it came out, and even though I had other GameCube games at the time, like I had Melee, I had Simpsons Road Rage, I had 007 Agent Under Fire, I still gravitated back towards Kirby Air Ride, because I love a unique experience with the game. And that's a lot of the games you'll see that I cover on this segment are going to be unique games. Sure, I'll cover games that I do think are classics or the best of a franchise or what have you, but I more want to talk about games that I feel like are very strange. I'm almost kind of pulling an old HVGN here and just talking about games that I think warrant a revisit. And Kirby Air Ride is certainly a game that I think more people should really pay attention to. I've heard people critique the fucking menu to this game and say that it's too bland or too much like Melee. Have you seen the menus to Kirby games or to games in general? A lot of them aren't that flashy and are very reminiscent of the stuff that's on Kirby Air Ride. Again, I feel like people are just far too harsh on this game purely because it tackles its design differently. While yes, there are only 3 game modes and 2 of them are really only worth a damn, I love this game a lot, but even I don't like Top Ride. I think it's pretty bland and doesn't offer as much as the other 2. There's still a lot to do in Top Ride. You know, I think that where this game's treasures lie are trying to complete it. You know, it's not a game that I have completed all these years later, but I've taken my steps to do a lot of completing in the game. You know, I think that the checklist system is a great way to unlock things. It encourages players to see what's under each square, trying weird things to make squares appear. You know, I know, especially in City Trial, because it's the one mode that I've done 100% completion on, it led me to doing weird things with each car and trying to soup them all up and get weird builds on them, which made the experience different every time. I tackled each round of City Trial differently. While yes, there's a lot to unlock in the Air Ride mode, that more has to do with how fast you are, what car you use. There's less exploration with the extras in that game, but there's still a lot to do. That's where you master the controls of this game, and that's what I think is also really great about this game. It's an easy game to pick up. It's a weird game to learn, but it's a really hard game to master. You know, each car handles differently. Some cars you don't need to charge up. Some you need to charge up for a certain amount of time. Each star has a different gameplay style to it, and there's a lot of depth that went into designing each star and how they work, and I respect the work that went into that part of the game, because it makes a different experience depending on which star you use. There's some stars that I still to this day have not mastered, but I know that there's a way to do so, and that excites me. This is a game that I foresee myself continuing to come back to year after year and diving a little more into. This is a game that I feel like is a well-brewed stew. You know, you sit down with it, and you have a nice bowl of it, and you get a lot from it. Maybe you season it a little differently this time, and you get a really nice pull from your stew. You know, there's a lot of nuance to each time you tackle a map. You know, whether you're going for a challenge or trying to unlock a challenge, or when you're in City Trial trying to uncover a square on the board. There's a lot to this. Again, while I don't think it's the best Kirby game, or the best GameCube game, it's one of the most unique experiences I've still had with a mainstay franchise, from a franchise that's all about unique experiences. And that's the other thing. People act like this is a weird black sheep in the Kirby franchise, but there's so many fucking weird games in that franchise. That franchise is built upon experimenting with that character. And I know that a lot of people see this as a misstep, but I personally do not agree. I think that it's fun. If you have friends with you that are willing to give it a try and sit with it, you can get some fun experiences out of it. I like that there's, you know, the local multiplayer in this game is a lot of fun. I like the use of powers on each, like, throughout each map. I like that each map is kind of themed a certain way. You know, I even like the way they incorporated Kirby using power-ups in this game. I think that they work well with the character and they don't feel out of place. Everything fits well with the control scheme that they have in mind, you know. And while I do think that you're going to get the most fun out of City Trial, I don't think people should write off Air Ride because, again, it's where you master each star. You take the skills you learn from Air Ride and bring them into City Trial. You know, again, Top Ride, yeah, whatever. It's kind of what sets it apart from being a true top-tier game. But even it has its own weird vignettes. It's a nice warm-up. You know, I feel like the menu itself is just organized weird. You should have Top Ride up top, Air Ride in the middle, City Trial on the bottom. From the echelon of how you should play it. You should warm up with Top Ride, get a weird handle for how this game's going to go, play Air Ride, the actual game, and then once you've played a couple of rounds of Air Ride, sink your teeth into City Trial and play a couple of really big rounds of that and see how crazy of a build you get your star to be, what weird events happen in the city, and all that sort of stuff. And there's a lot, again, I love this game. There's a lot that you can, there's a lot in its bones. There's a lot of meat on this that I feel like people kind of wrote off because you can sample the basics of what this game has to offer in like 45 minutes. You can do a couple races, you can play a round of City Trial, and that's it. But I feel like if you're one of those gamers who really want something to enjoy with your time, if you want a game that tests your patience at times with the challenges it has you do, but still gives you an experience worthwhile, I think Kirby's Air Ride is that kind of game personally. I think it's fun, I think it's weird, and I think that it's a really great entry in the Kirby franchise and presents a very different thing. Now, as for the legacy of this game never had a sequel. It's the one type of Kirby game that they've never really gone back to, and I understand why. I mean, Sakurai left HAL after this game was made. Obviously, the tumultuous design that went into this game, especially with its reception, I feel like left a weird imprint on this game. But it does have a cult following, you know. There's a reason why on the Normal Boot show Madness, it was a candidate for one of the best of the console. Because there is a community around making this game known as a gem within the console. And I am one of those people. You know, I love Kirby Air Ride. I think that it is a weird experience, but as you'll see with this version of the Let Me Tell You Abouts, I've got nothing but weird games to show you guys that I think people should pay more attention to from various franchises or just one-off games that never had a sequel. I think Kirby Air Ride should have a sequel. I think it's a game that if they were to take another crack at it, they could retool some of the features that people didn't like. They can put a bigger focus on the unlockables and collectibles that you can see in the game. Plus, there is bits and pieces of this game that came out, like Dragoon. The fucking smash move came from this game. You know, there's references to this game in other parts of the franchise, but it is definitely the outlier of the franchise because of its mixed reception that came out upon the game's release. But that's a game that I feel like, if I were to take anything to surmise what most I'm going to be talking about on the gaming version of this, it's Kirby Air Ride. It's a franchise that I love. It's a weird entry in that franchise, and it's a game that I feel like needs more positive output as far as talking about it in the internet. And that's my feelings on Kirby Air Ride. What do you think of Kirby Air Ride? Do you hate it? Do you think I'm an idiot for just showcasing it on my show and dying on the hill that is Kirby Air Ride? Let me know. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the support. I'm going to get out of here. I have been ViralRak. You guys take the days, lives, and situations, and I'll see you another day.